Morning, it's Friday morning. This is your instructor, Peter Olson. I'm taking a look at the week 3 discussion, giving you some quick feedback before you finally wrap up your identity package this week. First up, we got Willie. Willie, you did Osiris Coffee, which it looks like you're doing a pretty good job here. The one thing I would say is it's very monochromatic. You got one color, your assigned color. Consider adding additional colors. Yellow would be a good option. I haven't looked at your palette, but look at your palette and see how you can add other colors. You might be able to add very light tint of yellow into the background of the white paper to make it a little more sort of antique-y looking, perhaps. But your logo came out well, and overall it seems to have a bit of a flow and looks like it goes together. The one thing I'm questioning is why you have this guide visible. It looks like maybe you did a screenshot of this. Make sure you're putting it in InDesign and you know how to make a PDF from InDesign, so do that. All right, who's up next? Nicholas. Nicholas, you've been doing Black Sea Chocolate, and just first glance at this, it looks pretty good. It looks like you're sort of pulling it together. I really like where your logo came out. It's very interesting, well done, executed well. The logo type is what's missing, and as you can see here, you've got different configurations of the logo type. So you want to build a little more consistency with that. Like I might have this full logo with the logo type here as well. You could put the return address on the back flap if you want. I think this is probably okay to do it like this, but when your logo is brand new and you haven't really established it yet, you really want to, hit it a few times with the lockup, the way it's meant to be. So consider that. This little wave at the bottom seems to work. It fits with the brand idea. I do like this. I'm assuming this is a pattern brush you made, this wave. You could try that out as possibly a border element or something. But overall, looking pretty good. You could maybe add a color to the back flap. That might add something too. Next up, we got Cheyenne. Cheyenne, you're doing Big Easy Cookies, which is New Orleans and sort of Mardi Gras feeling. So there's some inconsistency here that you need to address. So this green on the envelope front is completely different than this green. You need to consolidate that and figure out how to make everything consistent. This script type that you're using here is a little too illegible, hard to read for info like this down here and stuff. Also, your logo doesn't seem to have any logo type, so you need to have the name of your company as part of your logo. So figure out how you get that in there, add it in, and then you'll be closer. Yeah, right now that logo is incomplete. It doesn't have a name. So you need to add the type to that. Let's see, next we got, this is Jared. Jared, Big Red Texas Chili. Your logo icon came out pretty well. Overall, this looks a little stark and unfinished. So if you've got a color, you've got a couple of reds in there and black. I would love to see additional color and additional elements that might add to your design. So for instance, these flames, maybe you could turn that into a little row of flames across the bottom of the page. The envelope is the default gray, so you want to make sure you're using a color palette for this. And more than just red and black would be ideal. So consider how you're adding your color palette to these elements to settle it in. Next up, I think we have Aaron. So Sol Beso. I was a little disappointed with this logo because the word mark and the icon are together, so it actually does have to be quite large to work, but it's okay. It's working all right. So I would consider other colors, like how are you adding additional color to these elements, not just a logo icon, but maybe the back flap is a different color, maybe there's additional elements on the letterhead. You've got this ghosted back photo here, which I don't think really works. It kind of just creates sort of a messy background that makes the logo hard to see. Just look at your color palette again. Think how you can make your assigned color pop a little more. The brown is okay because that's kind of a chocolate color, but it's pretty minimal use. these geometric elements don't seem really fit with the brand. You've got these little sun rays that look like drips of chocolate. You could do something with those, maybe make them chocolate, put them around the page somehow, and then maybe more organic shapes here instead of just geometric. So think about how you're doing that and adding more color. Nicole, we talked the other day, so this logo came out well. You're using the pattern of the coffee bean sort of overlapping. I think that's a nice pattern, except for it's quite large. And you need to shrink it down and make it a lot more tighter and less high contrast, I think, because right now it's sort of dominating everything. It pops a little too much. So consider how you could make that more like a texture instead of this bold illustration like. And you seem to be using your colors effectively. You've got a good color palette going. So perhaps a really light tint of this yellow could be sort of a background in the paper, give it a little more of an antique paper look. That might be nice with this. But overall, good job. Zachary, all right, so you're doing Layla's coffee, and so your assigned color is this kind of pink color. You're using this blue, which is pretty high contrast. It seems to be okay. It's a little dark, I would say, but probably okay. This circle element just seems sort of random. Maybe it's the sun, I guess, perhaps, but it seems a little stark at the moment. Now your logo, I gave you some advice, I think, earlier. It's like Layla's is big, and then Fairtrade Coffee could be smaller. That way you don't have such a long name sticking out from the side. Consider how you would configure this more like a logo icon. Think of the Full Sail logo, like how can you compact it up a little bit? Then it'll be a little easier to work with. All right, Mickey, you've got Shaman Tea. When I overall look at this, I think you're doing well. It seems like it's got a bit of a branded look with this lavender color. You've also got a yellow in there, which I think you could make a little more use of maybe on the flap here. But your logo, you've got the logo type here, but nothing here. It needs to have a lockup with the logo type and the icon like this. So make sure the name of your company is visible. Next up is Kristen. Pacific Coast Orchard, the 3 trees with the mountain. I do like this logo. I think the logo type is a little problematic, but when you see it here, yeah, you have to make it quite large in order to read. This letterhead, it's kind of borderline acceptable, but that is a lot of real estate being used up for the header. The letter itself, you could maybe configure it like a real letter a little more. But you see how your logo, because you've got the type integral to the icon, it takes up a lot of space. It demands a lot of attention. So you might reconfigure your logo and make it a little easier to pull the type out from the icon. This green color is very nice. You could add that maybe to the envelope or add it to these other sides. This border in here doesn't really make sense. It's kind of an additional element for no reason, but perhaps using their green color a little more too as well. It's coming along. All right, next up is Laura. You are working on Salty Dog, and you've got a nice color palette. I kind of like your icon. Okay, so your type configuration, this type with the multicolor in the type, it's a little hard to read. Sea salt caramels, that the thicks and thins on that are so severe, it kind of really disappears. I would go just for a simpler font there, maybe Helvetica or something. This is okay, but maybe one color would work better. And then once you get your lockup, see you've got this gigantic logo here. You've got to figure out how to make it work in a business card. You got to have the name as well. There's no name of the company here. Your envelope is default gray, so you you want to consider what color you want to use there. This color in his hat might be a good paper color overall. This green seems a little out of nowhere. I'm not sure where that green's coming from. Oh, it's in your logo. All right. Uh, yeah, and that's the only place you really use it. So take another look at your color usage and make sure your logo has a sort of lockup with the type. Again, think about the Full Sail logo proportions. This icon is way large compared to the type. Um, and next up, we got Tyrone. You have Peace Cookies. All right. So your logo is a lot problematic. Putting the type integral to the icon used a very kind of this chalk duster font, which makes it even harder to read. You made the P, the E. It looks kind of like a mess. I'm sorry to say. Uh, what you really want is sort of an icon and logo type configuration, like we talked about in the lecture. So when I look overall, your color usage is okay. But it seems like you're struggling with the type part of it a little bit. Uh, and some of these elements, you need a little more craftsmanship. It needs a little more finesse. Probably another element on the letterhead to bring it in. I'm not sure about these white borders on this. Maybe go all the way to the edge. It's a little hard to see here, but yeah. So neatness counts, and too close to the margin is not good. This shape is just sort of arbitrary, doesn't really make sense. Um, you're really kind of struggling here, so I would take another look and see if you can reconfigure your logo a little bit, and then maybe get a little neater with all these elements. If you need extra help, reach out to me and let me know. All right, next up we got Sahara. Sahara, this is pretty successful already. I know you're saying work in progress. I like these little chalkboard elements. This stuff, I get it, but it's like just a lot of extra for no reason. I would just ditch that. That's not helping your brand. Whereas these elements are really cool, and I love this back of the card. That's really working well. Your logo came out great. You're following the process. Perhaps this light orangey color could fill in some of the paper color on the envelope, maybe. It looks maybe a little stark, but it's overall it's pretty good. It's starting to feel like a brand. And yeah, there's some color exploration. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, a little bit of process too. Awesome. Great job, Sahara. All right. Next up, Doug. You did Bermuda T. There's your logo. Your logo is struggling with a little bit of contrast. All the elements, all the color seems to be in the same sort of value range, so it's all very light. Um, I know your assigned color is kind of a light color, so maybe there's some more contrast you can create with brightness, taking it down. Um, your logo configuration is a little awkward, as you can see. And perhaps this black would become a color. It could be a dark color, but maybe a dark version of this orange-brown color. This stuff, the business card has a little bit of a feel to it. I see the stripe there, and that sort of mimics there. It's a little awkward, but maybe okay. But the other elements look almost unfinished. There's just like very little going on there. So consider how you can add some color and flavor to this to make it feel a little more branded. All right, that's all I've got. If you did not post your work in the discussion and you need some feedback, reach out to me directly, text me on my cell phone. Today's a pretty crazy day for me, but I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. I hope that's helpful, guys. I look forward to your next versions.